In this episode, you will discover the 8 subtle signs of emotional abuse that you may have missed. Welcome to Heartbreak to Wholeness, the podcast helping you heal from the mindfuck of narcissistic relationships and move towards the secure, peaceful woman you want to become. I am your host, Brie Walta, relationship clarity coach and EFT certified practitioner. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the podcast. Today is such an important episode, and I'm so glad you are here for it because we are going to be talking about emotional abuse. And this is a topic that's really near to my heart as being somebody who has survived emotional and psychological abuse and the abuse that is less apparent. It is really hard to see and even harder to validate that emotional abuse has happened because it doesn't leave a mark. So in this episode today, you will learn the 8 subtle signs of emotional abuse that often go unrecognized in relationships. You will understand the very real impacts that emotional abuse has on your mental and physical health, and you will gain a practical tool that you can use in relationships that will help to prevent you from getting into emotionally abusive relationships in the first place. And be sure to stick around to the end of the episode where I will pull an oracle card that will offer you a specific message that you can use this week to come back to, stay anchored in, and really hold on to as you move through your healing. Okay, so when we think about abuse, in my mind, there's kind of 2 categories, and there are many nuanced and many layers in each category, okay? We have the physical abuse, and we have the non-physical abuse. The non-physical abuse are things like emotional abuse, psychological abuse, financial abuse, spiritual abuse. These are the categories of abuse that are often unrecognized or we're quick to really validate them away. And that's why this episode is so important, because I want you to hear some real life examples of these 8 subtle signs so that you can see if maybe you have been justifying them away in your relationship. Or at the very least, just get an understanding of what is acceptable behavior in a relationship and what is not. Especially if you've come from relationship examples in your childhood or your adulthood that didn't have the healthiest models of what relationships look like, how are you going to know? So part of my passion in doing what I do is educating you on what a relationship should feel like, and therefore what you should look out for to signal that it's not healthy. Emotional abuse, just like physical abuse, is really used to assert control. It's really used to chip away your self-esteem, to chip away your confidence, your self-worth, so that you create a dependency on this other person, and that creates the control. These types of insults, and we'll go through specific examples in these 8 subtle signs, but they can be disguised as concern, as humor, as advice even, and it's all with the basis to manipulate your thoughts and your choices. So as we move through these signs, think to yourself, have I heard this before? Have I accepted this before? Have I heard this and then made it somehow my fault? This is the nature of this type of emotional abuse. Okay. I'll also give a caveat here that this is a hard topic, as a lot of the topics are that we tackle on this podcast. So as you move through listening to these signs, pause the episode, make sure you're doing your breathing, and ingesting this information in a safe space. And as you move through this, if you are like, oh my God, this has happened and this has happened and this has happened, either presently in a relationship or in past relationships, and you want to dive more deeply into doing the work around how you ended up in the relationships, what this means, where this came from, how to actually heal from these types of abusive and or narcissistic relationships, there's an interest form in the show notes. Please reach out to me. I am so available for you. All right, let's dive into these 8 subtle signs. Number 1 is cutting you down and masking it with a joke. So an example would be, say you're at a dinner party and it turns pretty awkward because a man, in this case, says in front of everyone, oh wow, you actually did something right for once. Miracles do happen. Or, relax, it was just a joke. Why do you always take everything so seriously? Both of those things are attacking your character. In the first example, he's attacking that you don't do anything right ever. In the second example, he's attacking that you're taking things seriously or that you are an emotional person. So, cutting you down in a joking manner. Number 2, making fun of your interests or your hobbies. So let's use a dinner party example again. Let's say that you are sharing something new that you're doing. You picked up a new hobby and you're sharing with enthusiasm to the people around you. And your partner says in a joking manner, quote unquote, "Oh, wow, you're really proud of that? Adorable." Or "You picked that up really quick, didn't you?" Those types of comments are not a joke. In relationships, we are supposed to be cheerleaders for our partner. And when they pick up a new hobby or a new job or a new skill or what have you, lifting the other person up. And when your partner doesn't do that, it is hurtful. Is it intended to make you second guess perhaps the hobby that you picked up or your skills and being able to do the thing that you're doing? Number 3 is acting jealous or accusing you of cheating. This one sucks. I mean, they all suck, but to be accused of something that you know is deeply against your values is really heartbreaking. And oftentimes this comes from the other person, the narcissistic person or otherwise, because they are the ones that are actually engaging in that act of cheating. So they project that onto you to avoid any sort of spotlight on themselves. They might say things like, "Good girlfriends don't act single when they go out," or "Am I not good enough for you that you have to go out with your friends just for attention?" Those 2 comments are not appropriate in relationships. If there are concerns about the way that you behave with the opposite sex, those concerns should be brought up in a respectful way, not in these little statements that cut you down and make you feel like you're doing something wrong by going out with your girlfriends, or make you feel like you're doing something wrong by engaging with people in a way that is coming from you from a very genuine place. Number 4 is making decisions for you. What you wear, what you eat, what you do, the type of friends that you have. So let's start with clothing. Of course, when we're in a relationship, we want to be attractive to our partner. So when they say things like, "I mean, you can wear that if you want people to get the wrong idea," or "You don't really have to try that hard to get attention, you know?" Or "I thought you were different from the other girls who dress like that." That can be very confusing because they're not directly telling you, "No, you should not wear that skirt." But what they're saying is getting you to not wear the skirt. So it's asserting their control. In the category of friends, we have seen this where the isolation starts to happen in relationships. And so they might say things like, "Oh, you're hanging out with her again? I didn't think you liked that type of drama." Or, "I don't get why you have to talk to them when you have me." Or, "You're always so busy. Do you even have time for a relationship?" Those specifically, I know for me in my past relationship, were so confusing because then it got me second guessing where I was spending my time. And it was very quick to come in with the confusion within my own mind of, "Oh, am I not spending enough time with him? Or am I spending too much time with my friends?" And in reality, what should happen in a healthy relationship is that if there's a concern about not enough time being spent with each other, that should come out in a very, again, respectful way, saying something like, "Hey, I've been feeling like we haven't been spending a lot of time together. Can we maybe carve out some time to go on a date this week?" Or, "I just want to share with you that I feel like your friends have been prioritized a little bit more than me this week, and I really need a little bit more from you. Is that something that we can find a compromise in?" Those statements are getting across the point that you want to spend more time with the person, but not in an accusatory or blamey way. What's happening with the first statements that I shared is really making you feel guilty for having a life outside of this person, which furthers that isolation. And then in the eating category, controlling what you eat might look something like, "Oh, you shouldn't really have that dessert. It's going to be more work for you at the gym tomorrow." Saying things that poke at your physical appearance, that poke at maybe an intention that you had to start a diet or to start being more healthy. The poking and the making you feel guilty is the underlying basis of all of these statements that are not healthy and are signs of emotional abuse. Number 5 is making you feel dumb by questioning your intelligence or your memory of things. And this falls into the category of gaslighting, if you're familiar with that term, of really confusing your reality, denying your reality, telling you that something isn't right, something that didn't happen. So saying something as blatant as, no, that didn't happen, or we already talked about that and you told me that it was fine when you didn't talk about that and you know it's not fine, or something specific to your memory, maybe in a joking manner that's like, are you sure you actually graduated college if your memory is that bad? Those nitpicking, making you feel stupid, making you feel like your intelligence is questioned. The purpose of gaslighting in and of itself is to spin you around and confuse you so that you don't challenge them. You don't challenge what they're doing. You don't challenge what they're saying. If you're confused enough, you're going to give up. You're going to resign on some level, and they're going to be able to exit that conversation feeling like they were in control of what happened there. Number 6 is an especially painful one, especially for all of my empathetic listeners out there. This is refusing to listen to your thoughts, opinions, or feelings. I'm sure I could probably say 100% positive that you have experienced this in a relationship where you have been told, stop making problems out of everything, or you're being way too emotional and you're taking this out of context, or, geez, someone needs a nap, or you're being so dramatic, you get the award for the best meltdown, right? Like some version of that to make you feel unhuman for having thoughts, opinions, and feelings that you need to talk about. This infuriates me so much because it compounds the idea that there is not space for women to have feelings. And it oftentimes, even as women, we will chalk it up to being on our period, right? Or I'm PMSing, which I want you to hear from me now, like deeply hear from me, that you have so much permission to have feelings every day of every month of every year. This is not specific to just when you are getting ready to start your bleed. This is part of being human and part of being in relationship. When we're in relationship, we have different thoughts, feelings, and opinions than our partner. And we need to be able to come to them in a safe space to share those things, to find compromise, to make adjustments in ways that are productive to the relationship. You being told that your feelings don't matter or that you're making problems out of everything is dismissive and disrespectful and is not part of a healthy relationship. And that is why when you're in that dynamic with somebody, you feel so fucking frustrated because you as an empathetic person really value feelings. You value your own, you value other people's, and you can put yourself in those shoes. And when someone is not able to do that for you or give you the space or the time of day, it can feel extra painful. It can feel like this person actually doesn't understand me and really make you feel even more alone in the relationship than you would be as a single person. So again, hear me, hear me, hear me. You are allowed to have feelings all of the time. Number 7 applies more directly to if you have kids, but it's actively moving fights or starting fights in front of the children where the other person is painting you as the bad guy or very blatantly telling you that you are the one to blame. This could also look like creating some sort of conflict over something trivial. So let's say you want to get your hair done. And right before you're leaving to go get your hair done, your partner comes to you in front of the kids and says, do you even think about anyone else in the house when you made that decision? We don't have that kind of money for that. And maybe you say something back from a triggered place that you're not super proud of. And then they come back and say, do you hear how she talks to me? That's why I don't feel respected in this house. And it's setting you up to react. It's setting you up for that strong, intense emotional reaction so that you will have a freak out in front of the kids. And rightfully so, right? When someone is actively pushing your buttons, if you don't know what's going on, if you don't see that for what it is, it can be really tempting to just play into that fire, right? Throwing fire on the fire, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and this blaze happens in the house, this active button pushing. It could also look like saying something in front of the kids while you guys are having a disagreement of, I'm just trying to have a normal conversation, but you always turn this into a fight. Totally dismissing them from any part of the problem, not taking accountability for any part of what's going on, and painting you as the bad guy in front of the children. Children can be used in such a manipulative way, and it's so, so detrimental to their understanding of relationships, and often their mental health, because it creates this push and pull of, I love mom, and why am I being told that mom is bad? Or why am I being asked to take sides? So anytime that a partner tries to fuel the fire of a fight by using children, that is a sign of emotional abuse and manipulation. Number 8 is a confusing one because, again, this is masked as something nice, quote unquote. So it's making it seem like he is looking out for you is the sign. And what this looks like is saying something like, I just don't want people to get the wrong idea about you for wearing this thing, eating this thing, acting this way, etc. Or I really don't want you to get hurt, but hey, do what you want. Or I'm just saying a real man wouldn't let his girl act like that. In relationships, we want a partner who's looking out for us. We want a partner who can call us on our bullshit or help us maybe avoid a pattern that we have. But again, that should come from a place of respect. Hey, I'm seeing you start to engage this way. I know we've talked about you wanting some accountability around this. So how can I help you? Which is coming from a very respectful place, a place of opening vulnerable conversation, not just saying these jabbing statements, because that doesn't open up any space for real connection or vulnerability. It puts you on defense, it puts them in control, and it creates, again, this tornado of guilt inside of you, which is where all of this second guessing comes in. When we're going through emotional abuse, I would say like the biggest side effect is second guessing, is not being able to make a decision, is thinking that everything is your fault. All of these signs, all of these things that emotionally abusive people do are meant to plant doubt and guilt and fear. They are meant to make you second guess yourself so that you conform to what the abuser wants from you. And what's really fucked up about this, again, because these things are masked as taking care of you or caring about you, they also provide some sense of like plausible deniability that if you push back, he in this case can say something like, I was just joking, or I was just trying to help. You need to be wary of those statements, because when somebody interacts with you or talks to you in a way where they always have to say, oh, I was just joking, or I was just trying to help, that's not a real excuse, and that's not a real apology. That's often a signal that there's some manipulation happening there at the worst, and just really bad communication happening there at the very least. So be wary of the person saying, I was just joking, and then dismissing any further conversation about that, or I'm just trying to help, and dismissing any further conversation about that, or further making you feel like you're doing something wrong by wanting to have a conversation like that. These signs, these 8 signs that we just talked through, are covert. Covert means harder to see, and often when something is harder to see, we make up more stories about it. We try to justify our way around it. Oh, he's just having a bad day, or oh, he had a really traumatic childhood, he just doesn't know how to communicate. And what I want you to hear is that we can have compassion for people while also holding them accountable. We can have compassion without justification. And that is so important to understand, especially as an empathetic person, because I'm not telling you to not care that they came from a traumatic background or that they had a hard day at work, but I'm telling you to hold that with alongside the behavior that they're doing. Because just because they had a bad day at work doesn't mean that they can come home and berate you. They are still adults. They are still accountable for their actions. They are still accountable for dealing with the trauma that has led to their behavior here and now. So compassion without justification is so, so important to remember. And while we're talking about emotional abuse, I would be remiss to not go through the overt signs, because even though these on the outside might look like, oh yeah, that's totally emotional abuse, when you're in it, again, we can justify our way around a lot of this stuff. So some overt signs of emotional abuse would be threatening to hurt themselves when you're fighting, saying things like, if you leave me, I'm going to end my life, or I can't wait for you to leave so that I can hurt myself while you're gone and you can find me, those types of things. Another overt sign would be threatening to hurt you, people you care about, pets that you care about. That's a very overt, emotionally abusive thing to do. Another one is humiliating you in front of other people. So one of the beginning signs was making a joke that attacks your character. That taken to an extreme is just blatantly humiliating you or yelling at you in front of other people, be it your family or your friends. That is 1000% not healthy and not okay, and not something that you need to be on the receiving end of in any way. And then the last overt sign that I'll give to you here is threats to take full custody of your kids if you don't comply to do something. I had a client who was receiving this type of overt emotional abuse with her partner, who was threatening to take away threatening divorce, and then to take away full custody of their kids if she didn't do the sexual acts that he wanted her to do at the exact time that he wanted them done. And you can imagine when you're warped into this type of emotional abuse, you are really afraid of the person. You are really afraid of what they're capable of. And when they're threatening something so precious to you as your children, it can put you in a very paralyzed, frozen place. So, threatening you on any level, threatening people that you know on any level, pets that you know, your children, God forbid, threats are not okay. Threats are not acceptable in relationships. They are not something that you can justify away. In a healthy relationship, there are no threats. There are conversations around things that you might disagree about, but there are never, ever threats, period. And one last thing that I want to say about emotional abuse, because I think physical abuse has a lot more media around it of like the effects that that has on you physically and mentally. But emotional abuse does too. This invisible abuse is what it's sometimes referred to as, because you can't see the bruises on you, has longstanding effects. And that can look like PTSD, which stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. It can look like acute anxiety or confusion or shame or depression. It can look like a complete loss of self. And it can also develop into substance abuse issues, where you are using something else to try to dissociate out of this dynamic that you're in because it's so painful. And then from a body place, it can also create and exacerbate chronic pain. So there are very, very real side effects from emotional abuse. And at the beginning of this episode, I had promised you a practical tool that you can use in relationships to hopefully help you not get so far deep into unhealthy relationships or into emotionally abusive relationships. I want to be very clear here that emotional abuse or any abuse is not your fault, but this tool is going to help give you something that you can start using earlier in relationships to better see, to have better clarity around the type of person that you're with or the type of relationship that you're in. And this tool is boundaries. Boundaries get confused with requests all the time, so I just want to give you a quick understanding of why that's different. A request is asking or pleading with somebody to do something. So in the case of emotional abuse, it might look like saying to your partner, please stop telling me that I'm stupid, if they're dismissing your intelligence or dismissing your feelings. That's a request. Please stop doing this thing. It puts all of the control in their hands to continue or discontinue. A boundary is what you will do if they continue doing the same thing. So what you will do is something you have full control over if they continue to make you feel like you're not intelligent or to tell you that your feelings don't matter. So a boundary here would say something like, if you continue to tell me that I'm unintelligent, I'm leaving this conversation. If you tell me that my memory is wrong, again, I'm leaving this conversation. That is, leaving the conversation is what you're doing to take care of yourself in that moment, even if they continue to tell you the thing that's happening. So you get to remove yourself because of your own actions, your own control. It's not dependent on them stopping to do the behavior. And what's beautiful about that is you're either in a dynamic with somebody who will respect your request or respect your boundary, or you're not. And if you keep seeing over and over again that this person, despite you leaving the conversation, will say the same exact thing to you in the next conversation and not open up any type of reparative conversation about how hurtful that is, then you see the limitations that that person has to be emotionally vulnerable to be in a relationship or to respect you. So I always say to my clients that setting boundaries is a win-win, because either you're getting your need met no matter what, but you're also seeing the type of person you're in dynamic with and can hopefully exit those types of relationships earlier if you have that information earlier. So quick recap here, 8 subtle signs of emotional abuse that often go unrecognized are cutting you down in a joking manner, making fun of your interests or your hobbies, acting jealous or constantly accusing you of cheating, making decisions for you, what to wear, eat, or who to be around, making you feel dumb by questioning your intelligence or your memory of things, refusing to listen to your thoughts, feelings, or opinions, actively moving fights in front of children in order to paint you as the bad guy, and then making it seem like he's looking out for you by telling you that you're doing something wrong. Those are the 8 signs that we covered in this episode. And that's a lot of information. So please bookmark this, come back to it, re-listen to it, really let yourself hear it in many different ways. Sometimes when we get this information, it can be like an overload and we can dissociate or shut down a bit, especially if we're experiencing this currently in a relationship. So give yourself some time and grace to come back and really receive what you're being given by this episode. And from what we talked about today, you also now understand that there's very real impacts that emotional abuse has on you mentally and physically. And you have this practical tool of boundaries to start practicing in your relationships to hopefully mitigate emotional abuse in the future or help you get out of a relationship quicker if you're experiencing some of these subtle signs. Okay, so take your breaths, and we're going to pull a card that will offer you a message that you can use this week to stay very mindful of wherever you are in your healing process. So I'm shuffling, and a card that just came out is Balance in Motion. It's a picture of a woman walking on a tightrope. So let me find this message in the book. Balance in motion requires you to make some subtle shifts. Balance isn't static. Micro changes create macro changes. Start small. Feel into those tiny movements that your unconscious is calling you to make. A little more of this, a little less of that. If you move too quickly, you'll just spaz out and overcorrect. The changes you wish to make are possible with slight adjustment. Stop searching for the perfect middle point and stay in easy motion. Soft focus, light attention. Be aware of your position and gently move towards the next right step. These cards are always so freaking on point. So balance in motion, keep moving forward, taking your next right step, taking in information a little bit at a time so you can make these subtle shifts in your relationships and in your life. Thank you for hanging in here with me with a topic that's really challenging to talk about. Again, please take care of yourself. If you have listened to this episode and you're feeling activated, do some grounding exercises, reach out to me with an interest form, take the next right step for your nervous system and for your healing. And if this episode really resonated for you, I want to point you towards episode 68. That episode is called How Can They Be So Cruel? The Real Reasons Behind Narcissistic Behavior and Their Motivation in Relationship. That episode will help to clarify even further how people can be manipulative and abusive in relationships, because I know you, as the woman listening, cannot relate. You cannot understand that behavior because you are so far from that. And as always, I am here for you. You are not alone, and I will see you in the next episode.